The blue sky lacked the dark clumps of cotton dry eyes craved. Every direction was another piece of azure canvas the world's artist forgot to fill. From above, the sun smiled with full force. It didn't understand the dangers of unrestricted love. Beneath the sky, an equal vastness waited to die. Once there were greens covering the land like the famous bushes of the 70s. Now there were only bones and branches bleaching under the stars' adoration. However, despite losing the land's original organisms, life wasn't done. It was nothing if not an optimist, and always said, where there's a will, there's a way. And where there's a way, there's someone who's going to move in the way and call it home. Thus, within the brown expanse was a house without fences, addresses, or a sign on the door telling trespassers to take their gods elsewhere. It was too far for anyone to bother with. Even the taxman gave the place a pass. The house was a simple thing, red with a single door flanked by 2 open windows. Through one pane there was a gray dish covered in caked earth, a mark of its worthlessness. Thanks to man's memory being worse than God's, satellite signals didn't come by either. Behind the other opening was a young man on the phone, dimly staring into nothingness with eyes the color of despair. Minutes went by before he took the phone from his ear to glare at it, with its dead tone mocking a lifetime of poor decisions. It made a half-hearted ring after he slammed it into its cradle. Tempting as it was to fling it on the ground and stomp till his legs went numb, he refrained. It would have only wasted energy he didn't have. The young man, heading to those with addresses, put his hands on the sides of his face and rested his elbows on the window frame. There was a lot of brown and blue. It was enough to drive someone crazy. He was going crazy. What choice did he have? The brush inside his skull, painting random emoticons on his brain to keep things interesting, was running out of space. Desperately, he clawed for a hammer to break the tedium. Off in the distance, a small breeze kicked up some sand. 2 lovers blinked into existence with a flourishing spin before the air died down again, returning them to the dust. The event couldn't have been anything but a sign of an upcoming stroke, which Teddy refused to accept. The young man's mind cracked when the idea smashed into his temple. Dry spells were broken with eye-catching dances, right? A girl from a few nowheres over told him so. Even if it was nothing but hogwash, it was a different kind of hogwash. Smiling, Teddy jumped out of the window and up the hill. He called the mount. His bare feet burned on the sand, but he didn't notice the pain. At the top there were 3 brown feathers. He'd used them, because what would a rain dance be without feathers? Just a random flailing of limbs in hopes the sky would shed a giant sweat drop of embarrassment. Teddy put a feather in his hair. It fell out. He tried another spot with the same result. The feather fell from every inch of his strawberry blonde head. Only the spot behind his ear failing him. He kept the others in his hands because he was naked and the only other option involved clenching, and he couldn't dance like that. The young man hadn't danced in a while. He wanted to blame someone for the fact, but he just wasn't a dancer. Giving in to emotions, letting them carry his body like leaves on rushing water wasn't his style. He was too aware of his place in the universe. Even in his new home, with its solitude for a neighbor and vastness for a gate, he was stiff. Today, this wouldn't be a problem. Teddy would make it move like a puppet swinging on unseen strings after the fingers were bitten. The start was tense, like forcing open a rustic gate while killers closed in, but he managed to break through and made up for a lack of talent with vigor. His lanky limbs swung around as frantically as a spider stuck to a web caught in an updraft. He emptied himself so completely death stood nearby, tapping its foot, making hurry-up motions with its bony fingers. The world remained unmoved by Teddy's effort. What did Earth care for a man's sweat? Tiny drops could never satisfy the potential life beneath its skin. What did air care for a man's frantic muscles? It could move without them. What did the sky care for a man's desperate eyes? It was a far prettier shade of blue. What did the vacuum care for a man's heaving lungs? The exhaled air could never fill it. What did the cold steel of the orbiting satellite care for a man's throbbing arteries? Its electric heart couldn't beat to another's rhythm. What did the screen showing Teddy's desperate gestures care for the man? To it, every image was the same. The one who cared about a man pushing himself towards death sat behind the monitor. For Teddy's end would mean months looking for another job, and he was accustomed to making bank, relaxing while trillions of dollars of technology did the work for him. was the sound the large middle-aged man's coffee made when it hit the back of his cup. What the hell? His eyes rushed over the measuring devices below the screen. Hey Liz! The screamed words bounced around the tiny office like a bird's trapped in a storage shed. What the hell, Larry? Liz screeched, stomping through the door. He was nearly as big as Larry, so there wasn't much space. You nearly caused my heart to burst out of my chest. Liz, the man managed after a moment of stuttering. We're in deep shit. What? Larry pointed at the slowing Teddy. Liz's loose face stretched tight in fear. Move! She pushed Larry aside for a closer look. Her eyes rushed over the equipment like a god who knew she somehow managed to screw up all creation with an apple. Shit! A stubby finger pressed against the screen with meaningless numbers. Why hasn't that area gotten rain in so long? She pointed to another screen. It's listed as a tropic climate. Larry couldn't make eye contact when he spoke. It's automated. Unautomated. Liz shouted, clapping her hands by his face for emphasis. Larry tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come out. They grabbed onto the inside of his throat and held on for dear life, so he squirmed around Liz to do his best. There, he squeaked. Let's hope so. Liz frowned at Teddy, who wasn't moving. If that idiot dies, it's on us. Outside, the cold blue eye of the satellite blazed with a sphere of pale light before releasing a flash, incinerating the retina of several alien passerbys who didn't listen to the warnings about human space. They were spared the embarrassment of admitting their mistakes as someone panicked and turned their ship into the moon. And the moon won. Over Teddy's nowhere, the sky changed. It took a moment to realize the oil spreading into the blue above wasn't actually oil, but clouds so full they were blacker than the holes in Teddy's teeth, coming into existence from God knew where. They were too full to last long, and so they didn't, bursting everywhere like water balloons filled by first-timers. The young man, exhausted and near death, still tapping its foot, could only watch with eyes he didn't trust. Rain? It had to. He danced his heart out. He couldn't see it, but he was sure it was somewhere on the ground next to him. Seconds went by before he got his answer. The first drop hit the brow over his left eye like his mother used to do when he was a baby. The sensation was so alien he couldn't understand what was going on until the second kiss poked his cheek. He smiled. The last one he felt before the Reaper threw his essence over his shoulder, flew in between parched lips to its dying place on his tongue.